the more utilitarian. Zhu Guangqian, the more utilitarian the times are, the more we must maintain the courage that is incompatible with it. The article I am sharing with you today is written by Mr. Zhu Guangqian, the most important aesthetician in modern China. The original title is The Distance Between Art and Human Life. From Mr. Zhu Guangqian's view, the present world is just a dense and seamless web of interests. Most people cannot escape this trap, so they are still bound by the two big characters interest and interest when they go around. In terms of interests, people are the least it is easy to reconcile. Everyone puts himself first, and the sins of fraud, abuse, and robbery are rooted in this. Mr. Zhu Guangqian said, I firmly believe that the troubles in Chinese society are not entirely due to the system, but mostly due to the bad people's hearts. I firmly believe that to cleanse people's hearts is not something that can be done with a few moralists' words. We must follow the pleasant feelings, and nourishing character must start with full food and warm clothes, high officials and rich salary, etc., and do not have higher and purer desires. Purification of the human heart is required, and the beautification of life is required first. May we still know how to care for each other when we are busy, and remember to stick to our conscience even more in adversity. Zhu Guangqian, the more utilitarian the times are, the more we must maintain the courage that is incompatible with it. 01. Northerners first saw the West Lake, and people from the plains saw Imei for the first time. Although villagers with tanks were surprised by their wonders, but people who grew up in Westlake or Imei often felt that Westlake and Imei is nothing more than that. Novelty places are more beautiful than familiar ones. Orientals who are new to the West, or Westerners who are new to the East, often feel that the foreground objects in front of them are worth pondering. Clothes and behaviors that locals think are unfashionable, often look beautiful to foreigners. Antiquarianism is also weird. A bronze tripod from the Zhou dynasty or an earthen vase from the Han dynasty were just daily utensils for holding wine and meat at that time, but now they have become very rare works of art. Although some people who love antiques are greedy for their value, there are quite a few people who think antiques are really interesting. When I go to a foreigner's house, the host is often happy to show me some Chinese things. These are always porcelain arhuts, bow robes, pictures of fishermen, woodcutters, plowing, and reading, and other decorations. I always feel shy when I see them, but the owner sincerely praises them for their beauty. 02. 03. 04. When they see a melon, they think it can be picked and eaten, and when they see a beautiful woman, they feel sexual desire. They are total slaves to possessiveness. Why can't flowers grow in the garden for appreciation? But they are happy to take it off and hang it on their lapel or put it in their own bottle. When a farmer by the seaside met people who praised the sea view in front of his door, he shyly turned his head and pointed to a garden of vegetables behind his house and said, although there is nothing to see in front of the door, there is still a garden of vegetables behind the house. Not bad. If many people don't know that Zhou Dinghan vases are very valuable antiques, I believe they would rather have an iron pot or porcelain pot that is not easy to break than those broken steel and iron that can't cook and store vegetables. These people are all it is the inability to maintain a proper distance between the beauty of a work of art or nature and actual human life. The ability of artists and aestheticians lies in not letting the garden of vegetables behind the house overwhelm the sea view in front of the door, not judging the value of Zhou Dinghan bottles by the standard of serving wine and vegetables, and not taking a street as a hotel and a certain place. Signpost to the bank. They can jump out of good and bad, and only concentrate on the image of the thing itself. They know how to maintain a proper distance between beautiful things and practical life. From rich to poor, Russia gave China 4 important reminders. Professor of Peking University, I once pinned my hopes on the post-70s and 80s, but it turned out to be just a dream. Passed away 34 years when Jiabao, Miss Hu Yaobang, written with sincerity. Luha, I feel a real crisis, China wants to build a firewall. Heavy article. A succinct truth that precisely stings today's high-skilled groups in China. An extraordinary article 13 years ago accurately predicted the current domestic and international situation in China. Sure enough, there are experts in the system. In 2008, 82-year-old Zhang Zemin published a very forward-looking paper. Rao Yi, how many Chinese people applaud for America's bullying of Chinese people? How long will the Chinese continue to suffer in the world? Huai Brothers, 300,027, which has been struggling with lack of money in recent years, has received an inquiry letter from the Shenzhen Stock Exchange this time. In the announcement on May 17, the Shenzhen Stock Exchange asked Huai Brothers to explain the financial situation such as successive losses and equity pledges. Yes, the former China's first film and television entertainment company has reached the current state. Huai Brothers' 2022 annual report shows that in 2022, the company's total operating revenue will drop by 71.24% year-on-year, and its operating profit loss will be 982 million yuan, a sharp drop of 403% year-on-year. Huai Brothers 2022 Stock Market Annual Report / Source, Beidou Stock Connect. Another data worth noting is the proportion of equity pledges. The actual controllers of Huai Brothers, Wang Zongjun and Wang Zonglei, together hold 16.51% of the company's shares, but have pledged 99.91% of their shares. Generally speaking, the warning line for equity pledge is 60%. Such liquidation-style pledges are likely to arouse the suspicion of shareholders. Either the major shareholders liquidate their positions and cash out, or the major shareholders have to use excessive pledges in exchange for working capital due to the tight capital chain. If other companies in the film and television industry are experiencing a winter of film and television, it seems that Huai Brothers is experiencing an ice age. This is the 5th year that Huai Brothers has lost money. According to the data from Kikika, in the past 5 years, Huai Brothers has lost a total of about 7.243 billion yuan in net profit. However, there is another crisis that Huai Brothers needs to face. According to the China Enforcement Information Disclosure Network, on March 7, the brothers Wang Zongjun and Wang Zonglei were listed as persons subject to execution by the People's Court of Chaoyang District, Beijing, and the execution target was about 138 million yuan. Wang Zongjun and Wang Zonglei have been listed as the executors / source, Tianyanja. Today, the market value of Huai Brothers is only about 8.1 billion yuan. According to Flush data, the average market value of the media industry during the same period was around 11.9 billion yuan. In other words, Huai Brothers has fallen behind the average. Who still remembers that in 2015, Huai Brothers was in high spirits, ready to hit the market value of 100 billion. 01. Film and Television Company, go to Film and Television. Huai Brothers has long been in crisis. After all, this is not the first time that the Wang brothers have received inquiries from the Shenzhen Stock Exchange, nor is it the first time they have been executed. The same thing happened in 2021. In May of that year, Wang Zongjun and Wang Zonglei were already listed as persons subject to enforcement by the Beijing No. 2 Intermediate People's Court, involving a total amount of 300 million yuan. In the second half of the year, the Shenzhen Stock Exchange issued an inquiry letter asking Huai Brothers to explain its business risks. Why did Huai Brothers, who once broke through the siege and gained a firm foothold among 16 state-owned film studios, end up here? Things have to start in 2008. This year is the 20th anniversary of the establishment of Huai Brothers, and it is also the peak of Huai Brothers. At that time, Huai was still an industry leader that could attract companies such as Alibaba, Tencent, and Ping An of China to invest in its shares. Recalling the star-studded scene at the 20th anniversary celebration, the current Wang Zongjun may regret his decision at that time. Huai Brothers' 20th anniversary celebration scene, Left 5 and 6 are respectively, Wang Zonglei, Wang Zongjun, / source, Visual China. At the celebration in June of that year, Wang Zongjun officially announced the development direction of Huai Brothers to filmization, and established 3 major sectors: film and television entertainment, brand authorization, and live-action entertainment, and internet entertainment. However, before the official announcement, Huai Brothers had already started a war outside the film and television industry, and its business scope expanded to games, internet technology and other fields. Judging from the financial report data for 2022, the proportion of long-term equity investment in Huai Brothers' total assets also reached the first place, 30.68%. Possibly, the problem lies here. During those few years, Huai Brothers made mergers and acquisitions everywhere. Among these dozens of mergers and acquisitions, the most eye-catching one is the high-premium acquisition of Dongyang Hehen and Dongyang Mera in 2015. Dongyang Hehen was just established the day before the acquisition, while Dongyang Mera was acquired. Net assets were negative at the time of acquisition. In the announcement, Huai Brothers acquired a 70% stake in Dongyang Hehen, whose net assets were only 10 million at the time, for 756 million yuan, a premium of over 100 times. As for Dongyang Mera, Huai Brothers spent 1.05 billion to invest and subscribe for 70% of the shares. Why are Huai Brothers willing to spend a lot of money for these two companies? The shareholder lists of these two companies may be able to give an explanation for such behavior. Dongyang Hehan has many star shareholders such as Li Chen, Angelababy, Zheng Kai, Feng Xiaofen, etc., and these stars were popular because of variety shows back then. Subscribing for 70% of the shares may have the idea of win-win with its artists. Dongyang Hehan shareholder information /source, Kikaka. Dongyang Mera is controlled by Feng Xiaogang, and the subscription of Dongyang Mera's shares is more like a deep bond with Feng Xiaogang. After all, in the nearly 10 years before the acquisition, Huai Brothers broke into the world almost by cooperating with Feng Xiaogang. In many interviews, Wang Zongjun also admitted the importance of Feng Xiaogang to Huai Brothers. And in the past few years, countless artists and filmmakers under the former Huai Brothers have left. At this moment, Huai Brothers needs to hold Feng Xiaogang tightly to support its main film and television business. However, Dongyang Hehan and Dongyang Mera have repeatedly failed to complete the performance that should be completed in the gambling agreement. What the high premium acquisition brought to Huai Brothers was a huge impairment of goodwill in the financial report for years. For example, the 2022 financial report shows that Huai Brothers' goodwill impairment has exceeded 1.5 billion yuan. But the project that burns the most money is live entertainment. At that time, Huai Brothers vowed to be the Disney of China, so they invested and built various movie towns and movie worlds. By 2018, Huai Brothers had signed 18 live-action entertainment projects. At the opening ceremony of Suzhou Film World in 2018, Wang Zongjun revealed that Huai Brothers spent 3.5 billion yuan to build this theme park. Suzhou, Jiangsu, Huai Brothers Movie World /source, Visual China. But the live-action entertainment project did not bring much profit to Huai Brothers. In the 2022 Huai Brothers financial report, the profit of the brand licensing and live-action entertainment sector has dropped to 11.32 million yuan, and the contribution rate to the overall operating income is only 2.81%. Even in 2017, when this sector was the most profitable, its profit amounted to only about 258 million yuan, accounting for only 6.56% of the total operating income. In fact, even though Huai Brothers wants to diversify its own revenue paths, the high-investment live-action entertainment projects over the years have had little effect, and the film and television entertainment sector still occupies the bulk of its revenue. When the Wang brothers reacted and prepared to return to the main business of film and television, it was too late. 02. I can sell anything. 2018 is another turning point for Huai Brothers. The tax inspection storm caused by Mobile Phone 2 has dealt a huge blow to Huai Brothers, the film's main controller, and the company's already tight capital chain is facing an even more urgent situation. And the movie hasn't been released yet. And that year, Huai Brothers did not bet on a blockbuster movie. Huai Brothers, 300,027, which has been struggling with lack of money in recent years. However, this is only the beginning of Huai Brothers' losses. The tax inspection storm caused by Mobile Phone 2 has dealt a huge blow to Huai Brothers, the film's main controller, and the company's already tight capital chain is facing an even more urgent situation. And the movie hasn't been released yet. And that year, Huai Brothers did not bet on a blockbuster movie. Mobile Phone 2 concept poster /source, Dubon. The impact of the Black Swan incident was finally reflected in Huai Brothers' 2018 financial statements. The company ushered in its first loss since its listing in 10 years, and it was a huge loss. The total annual revenue fell by 1,000.4% year-on-year. However, this is only the beginning of Huai Brothers' losses. Although in 2019, the two brothers Wang Zongjun and Wang Zonglei, who had been absent from the Spring Festival that year, finally decided to return to the main business of film and television. At the 2019 research meeting, when reflecting on the performance in 2018, Wang Zongjun mentioned that the downturn in the main business is a pain point that Huai Brothers needs to solve, and pointed out that one direction of Huai Brothers' development in 2019 is asset disposal, gradually divesting businesses and assets that are weakly related to movies and real scenes are used to withdraw funds. Wang Zongjun's statement was originally a charge to announce Huai Brothers' return to film and television, But Wei Brothers did not capture this familiar highland of film and television. Feng Xiaogong's 2019 new work Only You Knows did not perform well at the box office, and the highly anticipated 800 also had twists and turns, and it has not been finalized for a long time, and it was successfully released in 2020. According to the financial report, in 2019, the operating income of the film and television entertainment sector fell by 42.93% year-on-year. At this time, the predicament of Wei Brothers can also be observed from Wang Zongjun's behavior of selling paintings. Wang Zongjun responds to selling paintings at the /source, Sina News. At the Abuli China Entrepreneurs Forum Summit in August 2019, Wang Zongjun, who loves collecting, mentioned that he was selling paintings for working capital. For the safety of the company, I can sell everything. There is nothing shameful in this. It is worth noting that during the years when Wei Brothers stayed away from film and television, other film and television companies that competed with Wei Brothers, such as Enlight Media and Ali Film and Television, have caught up and carved up a certain or even more than Wei Brothers in the market. Therefore, after 2019, Wei Brothers, which adhered to the old routine and lost many contracted artists, released many works, but most of them were cold in the fierce market competition and could not save the company from the fire. On the contrary, the audience who walked into the movie theater even said that the quality of Wei Brothers movies was not good. Moreover, the industry downturn brought about by the epidemic has also greatly impacted Wei Brothers' charge in the main business. The 2022 financial report shows the weakness of Wei Brothers in the main film and television industry. In 2022, the gross profit rate of its film and television entertainment sector has reached -19.69%, and the operating income of the sector has also fallen by 71.83% year-on-year. Under such circumstances, Wang Zongjun and Wang Zonglei had no choice but to find money everywhere. Whether it is borrowing, selling assets, equity pledges, or fixed assets mortgages, if there is no way to get the funds needed to maintain the capital chain from the business, then Wei Brothers has to take other measures to raise funds. This is also one of the reasons why Wang Zongjun and Wang Zonglei's pledged shares are much higher than the 60% warning line. During the 2 years from 2020 to 2022, Wei Brothers has signed loan extension agreements with Minsheng Bank many times to extend the repayment period of the 700 million yuan credit line borrowed from the bank in January 2019. Wei Brothers loan extension agreement /source, Shenzhen Stock Exchange. Coincidentally, in 2017, Wei Brothers repeatedly extended the repayment period for the 300 million yuan credit line received from the Bank of Tianjin due to its inability to repay. The 2022 financial report shows that Wei Brothers has pledged 70% of Dongyang Mera's equity, 23.25% of Yunhan Technologies' equity, and 58% of Xinjiang Films, Tianjin's equity to obtain loans from various sources. Fixed assets are no exception. Wei Brothers has already mortgaged all 3 sets of self-owned properties in Haikou and the self-owned properties of its 2 subsidiaries, and obtained a total of 2.1 billion loans. At the same time, Wang Zongjun and Wang Zonglei are reducing their shareholdings in the company to cash out, and even their illegal reduction of holdings will be criticized by the Shenzhen Stock Exchange in 2022. Wang Zongjun and Wang Zonglei were notified and criticized by the Shenzhen Stock Exchange /source, Tianyanja. However, in the 2022 annual report briefing on May 23, Wei Brothers stated that the funds obtained from the reduction were to repay the stock pledge financing, and emphasized that the company still has a wealth of projects in reserve, hoping to appease investors' anxiety. However, in the face of Wei Brothers' embarrassment, investors' confidence in the company cannot be restored with a briefing session. If you compare the financial reports for 2021 and 2022, you can find that Tencent, which is the second largest shareholder, has reduced its shareholding in Wei Brothers to 1%. Maybe the years of cooperation between Tencent and Wei Brothers will stop. So, if it continues to lose money, can Wei Brothers, which has been hovering on the verge of delisting, survive? This is really my life-saving medicine. It used to be 86 yuan a bottle, 100 tablets, but now it has risen to 1,000 yuan a bottle in less than a year, an increase of more than 10 times, and it is still unavailable. Today's China Youth Daily said that many consumers reported that the price of a hormone drug hydrocortisone acetate tablets on the market has skyrocketed. Since most of them need to be taken stably for a long time, the skyrocketing price has caused a sharp increase in the cost of medication for many patients. Antibiotics, hormones, and vitamins are the three major elements of clinical medicine. As a representative drug of hormones, hydrocortisone acetate is widely used clinically. With the sharp price increase, patients with indications for this drug will fall into the predicament of difficult to find one drug. The heavy burden of the past. Some people say that it is an upgrade of the old and new technology, so there is a temporary phenomenon. You don't have to worry. The question is, can this matter be taken care of? Some people emphasize market laws. What is the relationship between life insurance and market laws? Because you want to save your life anyway, so my market is more regular. Do you think this will work? In the micro-operation of medical industrialization, some people are just testing your tolerance, staring at your small wallet, and using the so-called rules to their fullest. There is a profound theoretical problem here. In our market economy, is it people-oriented or capital-oriented? People-oriented, that is, life-saving should be put first. It's like this medicine is smelted in a furnace. In the original 10 furnaces, one is updated first, and the cycle is pushed forward, so as not to cause large fluctuations in the market. If it is based on capital, it's up to you, just increase the price and earn more. The two routes are distinct. People-oriented, there is also a question of who should be the center. The same kind of life-saving medicine has increased by 10 times. Some people don't feel it, while others feel that the price is too high. I want to say that life-saving medicine should be based on the needs of the vast majority of people. Never forget the vast majority. Therefore, the problem of life-saving medicine, or the problem of where to sit on the buttocks. Some people think that the theory is just talking about metaphysics that is far-fetched and has nothing to do with life. It is a bunch of beautiful cliches. Big fallacy also. Sickness is suffering and death. The medical industry, medicine, and surgery, are supposed to save lives and heal the wounded, but if the medicine maker runs a hospital, making money is the first priority, and the hospital becomes a shopping mall. Without the ability to bargain, this shopping mall is not a voluntary transfer of money and goods, services, but is slaughtered by others. Isn't this a monkey full of twists and turns? It completely deviates from the original intention of opening a pharmaceutical factory and running a hospital. To put it bluntly, do you want to treat diseases or make money? I have been thinking about a problem for a long time, and I have never dared to say it rashly. There are more and more diseases that require lifelong medication. Of course, the theme of the roar is that human beings have discovered the law of diseases and found a way to deal with them. It must be a great civilization. Evolution, but are there some tricks, and secrets in it? That is, using chronic illnesses that torment people, treating patients as evergreen trees that make money, going into the turbulent sea of medical industrialization? Is there anyone who evades radical cure and doesn't let you cure it completely, and regards radical cure as an unsustainable wrong human business model? Before the epidemic, on April 10, 2018, a research report by the world-renowned investment bank Goldman Sachs analysts calmly and cruelly gave the analysis conclusion that a certain treatment method, such as gene therapy, may become a one-time cure for chronic diseases. However, the business model of curing patients quickly or even once is not conducive to long-term profits. For example, Goldman Sachs of the United States, the pharmaceutical company Gilead launched a pangenotype anti-HCV drug 10 years ago. The marketing name was Sofosbuvir. Due to the remarkable therapeutic effect on hepatitis C therapy, the cure rate was as high as 90%. The number of hepatitis C patients in the world has decreased sharply. Although a lot of money was made at that time, there was no follow-up cash flow. This is a case of unsuccessful pharmaceutical industrialization. The authority of China's medical industrialization theory, in the EMBA class of famous universities, often mentions this case. He has a relaxed face, talks, and laughs happily, and the people who study with him admire him deeply. Both on and off the stage are thinking about how to avoid the commercial trap of curing people's diseases. What a wonderful prospect of medical industrialization. Has the opportunity to be embedded in this beauty with different roles and postures. Sorry, I am by no means saying that the life-saving medicine whose price has increased by 10 times is the result of learning the Goldman Sachs case. There is no connection at all between the two. But it is true that some pharmaceutical companies gave the original medicine a new name, changed the best, and made up some new words, so the price went up. All of these are not only not our direction, but should also arouse the high vision of the whole society. Table of contents. Introduction. 1. The concept of the Yellow Emperor era. 1. Different versions of the Yellow Emperor era. 2. The most commonly recognized era of the Yellow Emperor. 2. Doubts about the era. 1. Constrained by the framework of historical records. 2. Confucian 5 emperors are moral selection. 3. On the Prisia dynasty from the perspective of abdication. 4. Contradictions in classics. 3. Traceability. 1. Traceability breakthrough. 2. The starting point of the 4 Jiazi epochs. 3. $1 time. 4. Pushing up the UN proves that the daily stems and branches have not changed. 5. Possible 4 Jiazi. 6. Binary time. 4. Circumstantial evidence. 1. The dynasties of the 5 emperors in Weishu. 2. Han Fisa's record of Yuxia's time. 3. The Younger Dryas incident. 4. The Shanhai Jing records about Zhuangzi. 5. Verification of winter solstice in the past dynasties. V. Conclusion. Introduction. Regarding the era of the Yellow Emperor, although there is an exact date, but because there are many historical versions and there are contradictions with the relevant records of ancient history, the exact date ends in the 74th year of the Republic and records 4,720 years. I have always kept it those who were skeptical always tried to look up the information to find the real Huangdi era, but their energy and ability were limited, so they have been put on hold. Until recently, by chance, I found a breakthrough to reveal the age of the Yellow Emperor. I am writing this article and sharing it with readers. Friends who have doubts are welcome to come and enlighten us. The final textual research data of this article is an exclusive textual research, first published, hereby declares. 1. The concept of the Yellow Emperor era. The so-called era of the Yellow Emperor has 3 different concepts. 1 is the calendar era, the other is the era of the Yellow Emperor's ascension to the throne, and the other is the year of the Yellow Emperor's birth as the first year. The so-called calendar era is the beginning of the first year of the era using the Yellow Emperor's diali. The so-called era of the enthronement of the Yellow Emperor, that is, the beginning of the first year when the Yellow Emperor replaced Chenin as the co-lord of the world. The two are actually not the same year and the same starting point, but people often confuse them in modern history. Taking the year of the Yellow Emperor's birth as the first year was only advocated by Liu Shipai in the late Qing dynasty, and was used in National Daily and Huangdi Seoul. 1. Different versions of the Yellow Emperor era. About the different versions of the epoch. First, at the end of the Qing dynasty, the revolutionaries adopted the Huangdi era to replace the emperor's calendar. Song Jiaran advocated that the year of Gihai, which was considered to be the enthronement of the Yellow Emperor, be regarded as the first year of the era, and 1904 AD as the 4602 year of the Huangdi era. According to this calculation method, 2023 AD is 4721 of the Yellow Emperor. The second is that Liu Shipai advocates taking the year of the Yellow Emperor's birth as the first year. Based on his calculations, 1903 AD is regarded as the 4614th year of the Yellow Emperor's era. According to this calculation method, 2023 AD is the 4734th year of Huangdi. The third type is mainly the chronological method adopted by the publication Jiangsu, which presumes that 1903 is the 4394th year of the Yellow Emperor's era. Jiangsu was edited by the Jiangsu Association of Chinese Students Studying in Japan. It was first published in Tokyo, Japan in April 1903. It is a monthly magazine with 12 issues in total. As for what documents Jiangsu used to determine this data, it is impossible to verify it now. According to this calculation method, 2023 AD is the 4514th year. Table of contents. Introduction. The second is that Liu Shipai advocates taking the year of the Yellow Emperor's birth as the first year. Based on his calculation, first 4,000, 6,000 and there have always been doubts about the era of the Yellow Emperor. Because almost every version cannot perfectly explain the history, as well as the contradictions in its own ancient history records, so there are different versions in the first year of the era, and each is questioned. So what? How to question correctly. 1. constrained by the framework of historical records. Historical records was hailed by Lucen as the swan song of historians, Li Sao without rhyme, and has been regarded as official history in the past dynasties, with a very high status. In fact, historical records was not called historical records, but Taishi Gongshu. Strictly speaking, Taishi Gongshu is not a history book, but a zishu. The so-called zishu is a book written by various scholars to explain their own views. Zishu can borrow history, can also superimpose history, and can even fabricate stories in fantasy. It does not follow history as strictly as history books. Is the history of Taishi Gongshu of the nature of zishu really reliable? Taishi Gongshu is actually the first person to destroy the chronicles. The history of China before Taishi Gongshu used chronicles, and it is clear at a glance what happened in what year and month. However, Taishi Gongshu abandoned the chronology and created its own biographical style, disrupting the strict time relationship and turning it into a story meaning like a story. If read in order, it can confuse the reader. Take the Yellow Emperor in Taishi Gongshu compared with Bamboo Book Chronicles as an example. Taishi Gongshu, the Yellow Emperor, the son of Dian, surnamed Gongsun, named Qian Yuan. He was born as a god, weak but able to speak, young and sloppy, long and dunman, mature and intelligent. At the time of Qian Yuan, Sheneng the world is declining. The princes invaded each other and tyrannized the people, but Sheneng's family was able to conquer. So Qian Yuan used to fight, and the princes did not enjoy it. Salty returns to Qian Yuan. Qian Yuan cultivates morality and revitalizes soldiers, governs 5 qi, 5 kinds of arts, comforts all people, travels all directions, teaches bears to fight with Yandi in the field of Bankan. After 3 battles, he will win. Qiyu there is no need for the emperor to make chaos. So the Yellow Emperor conscripted the princes, fought with Qiyu in the wild of Zhuelu, and killed Qiyu. But the Princess Xianzun Qian Yuan was the son of heaven, and he replaced Sheneng as the Yellow Emperor. If there is trouble in the world, the Yellow Emperor therefore, those who conquered it, those who were flat went to it, and the pass through the mountain did not live in peace. The Yellow Emperor had 25 sons, and 14 of them had surnames. The Yellow Emperor lived on the hill of Qian Yuan, and married the daughter of Xiling. The concubine, who gave birth to 2 sons, will have the world afterwards. One is Xianxiao, who is Qingyang, who descends to Zhangshui, Jieyang. Jieyang has sages and virtues. The Yellow Emperor died and was buried in Jiaoshan. His son Changji's son, Jieyang Li, was Emperor Zhuangzi. Bamboo Book chronicles Huangdi Qian Yuan, whose mother is Fuebao, saw the big electricity around the Big Dipper pivot star, illuminating the countryside, and felt pregnant. The emperor was born in Shaoqiu in the 25th month. Weak but can speak, Longian, has holy virtue, impeaching all gods to make it. In the first year, the emperor came to the throne, and there was a bear. Initially made Mianfu. 20 years later, Jing Yun met and used Yun to discipline him. In the autumn of the 50th year, Gangshen, the phoenix arrived, and the emperor sacrificed in Luoshui. 59 years, Guangxiang's guest, Changhu's guest. In the 77th year, Changji fell to Ruoshui, and gave birth to Emperor Jianhuang. 100 years, the ground cracks. Emperor Ji. In contrast, it is obvious that Taishi Gongshu is a story club, and Bamboo Book Chronicles is a formal history writing. In addition, the writing style of Taishi Gongshu is not only like telling a story, but also repeating and wordy, very disorganized. For example, when writing about Emperor Ku Gao Xian is the great-grandson of the Yellow Emperor. Gao Xian's father is called Sunji, Sunji's father is called Xianxiao, and Suangxiao's father is called Huangdi. Neither Zixuangxiao nor Sunji can reign, the highest Jiaoxin is the emperor. Jiaoxin is the son of Zhuangzi. When writing about the Yellow Emperor, it has been written in the previous article that the daughter married to Xiling is for Liza to be the concubine of the Yellow Emperor, and she has 2 sons. One is Xianxia. Zhuangzi collapsed, and Gao Xinlai, the grandson of Xianxiao, is Emperor Ku. Since it has been written before that Xianxiao is the son of the Yellow Emperor, and Zhuangzi collapsed and established Suangxiao's grandson, then Emperor Ku is. It is very obvious that the lineage of the Yellow Emperor is a descendant of the Zhuangzi family. Is it necessary to write it again? There are many ways of writing similar to this. Going back to Taishi Gongshu, Luo Mi's evaluation in Lu Shi is to criticize Sima Qian's great wisdom for imitating the sage's self-created scriptures to write history. The biography of Genesis destroys the chronicle and causes unnecessary troubles for readers. This kind of story will be written in a very bad way. For example, the Book of Five Emperors has not finished writing about the Yellow Emperor. Regarding the laws and calendars and rituals and music of the Yellow Emperor's era, it has to be transferred to the Longji, Lingji and Leg to read. In the Benji of the Five Emperors, it was written directly when Emperor Yao formulated the calendar, and it was not transferred to the Liji. This way of writing feels that the Yellow Emperor did not create the calendar in the Benji of the Five Emperors, and Emperor Yao started it. Mess up. In the same way, the Taishi Gongshu framed the five emperors as five consecutive emperors, and made a family tree, although the family tree is very outrageous. For example, Shun was written as the seventh grandson of Zhuangzi, and when Shun was old, he passed the throne to Deu, and Deu is actually Zhuangzi's grandson, so the age of the Yellow Emperor is locked in the hundreds of years before the Xia dynasty. According to this framework, the first year of the Yellow Emperor must be locked within 4,000 to 5,000 years. Obstacles for later generations to trace the origin of the first year of the Yellow Emperor and the ancient history of the Qing dynasty. 2. Confucian Five Emperors are moral selection. Since Benji of the Five Emperors begins with the Five Emperors, it should have started with the first monarch who proclaimed himself emperor, but the Yellow Emperor is not the beginning of the Five Emperors. What about the Yan Emperor before the Yellow Emperor? What about Qingdi before Yandi? Some people may say, aren't the three emperors of the three emperors and five emperors Suiren, Fuxi, and Shenan, Emperor Yan? This version of the three emperors is actually only found in the Shangshi Dazwen in the Han dynasty. Since Emperor Yan is called the emperor in the title of later generations, he is the emperor and not the emperor. Who was the first to call himself emperor? It's actually Fuxi. Confucius family sayings, from Fuxi to the following are called emperors. Confucius said that Fuxi began to proclaim himself emperor. Who told him this knowledge? According to the records of Confucius's family language, it was Laozi who told him. Ji Kangzi asked Confucius, I have heard the names of the five emperors before, but I don't know the truth. What are the five emperors? Confucius said, in the past, Qiu also heard that all the old men said, there are five elements in the sky, water, fire, metal, wood, and soil, and they are cultivated in time to form all things. 1 year, 360 days, each of the five elements is 72 days, and it also grows and grows in 1 year. All things dare not fail to succeed. The gods are called the five emperors. The gods of the five emperors and the five elements are the creatures, and the prophecies are all named after them. They are also the kings of the ancient kings, who changed generations and changed their names. They follow the five elements, and the five elements become kings. The law of the five elements changes the king to the end, the beginning to the beginning to the mute king, the world, and the second to the birth of the line. The sayings are that the emperor of the five essences will give birth to the king. It is nothing to say. To die for the king of the Ming dynasty is matched with the five elements, Taiji is matched with wood, Yandi is matched with fire, Huangdi is matched with earth, Xiahao is matched with gold, and Zhuangzi is matched with water. Night sailing boat, the emperor of heaven was called emperor, Fuxi was called emperor, Xia, Shang, and Zhou were called kings. In other words, the so-called three sovereigns and five sovereigns, the real five sovereigns must be counted from Fuxi, which is also consistent with the five sovereigns in the Lushi Chunkaiyu version. Qing Emperor Fuxi, Yan Emperor Shenan, Bai Emperor Xiahao, Xian Emperor Zhuangzi, and Yellow Emperor Xian Yuan. The Chronicle of the Five Emperors should have been written from Fuxi, but Sima Qian created a new system of five emperors, kicked Xiahao out, and recorded the five emperors as five consecutive people, which greatly shortened the history before the Xia dynasty. In fact, the title of the so-called five emperors refers to the five selected dynasties, and their monarchs all use their titles. It is by no means five consecutive emperors. Why do you say that? Taking Shenan as an example, Shenan was called Emperor Yan, and Taishi Gongshu also said that at the time of Xian Yuan, Shenan's family declined. Therefore, the Shenan family has declined for several successive generations, and Shenan Yandi is a dynasty and not a single person. Tongzi, from Shenan to Yuanfanate, a total of 500 years. Xian Yuan Huangdi biography, it was a conspiracy with Yuang to attack Shu, using jade as a soldier. Taking Puxi again as an example, Yulan 78 quotes Dunjia Kaishan 2, Nuwa's family has 15 generations, all of whom took the title of Boxi. Since Puxi and Sheneng among the 5 emperors are all dynasties, how can the other emperors be just individuals? Therefore, the 5 emperors in Taishi Gongshu are the result of the Confucian selection in the Han dynasty, not the continuation of 5 people. 3. On the Prixia dynasty from the perspective of abdication. Why is it said that the 5 emperors are dynasties? In fact, Taishi Gongshu itself hides the secret. The abdication of the ancient emperors advocated in Taishi Gongshu, which was regarded as a moral model by later generations of Confucianism, concealed the secrets of the dynasty. According to the records of Taishi Gongshu, as long as the throne is not passed on to one's own son or grandson, it is abdication. Because according to the Taishi Gongshu, the Yellow Emperor, Zhuangzi, Diku, Emperor Yao, and Emperor Shun all belong to the same family. Emperor Yao gave up to Emperor Shun, and Emperor Shun gave up to Emperor Yu. They are all from the same family, but they are not handed down. This is an abdication. That being the case, according to the Taishi Gongshu, Zhuangzi passed on to the clan's son Diku, including the cut-off Xiahao to his nephew. The Taishi Gongshu is a nephew. Why is it not abdication? Why do you only think that Yao and Shun were abdication? Yue Jilan 2, Shennong 540 years. Yellow Emperor 1520 years. Xiahao 400 years. Zhuangzi 500 years. Emperor Ku 350 years. Yao 100 years. Shun 50 years. Yu 430 years. Yin 644 years. The time of Yao and Shun was very short. According to the Taishi Gongshu records, Yao reigned for 98 years and Shun reigned for 50 years. In the 1990s, Yao and Shun were individuals and not dynasties, so their abdications were specially written, while other emperors who were also passed down from the same family were not called abdications. There was only one reason, and that was the continuation of the dynasty. Of course, in fact, Yao and Shun were also dynasties, and the last king gave way to the first king. 4. Contradictions in classics. Take the chaotic and illogical genealogy of the 5 emperors in Taishi Gongshu as an example, which cannot be explained. If the 5 emperors are regarded as dynasties, spanning thousands of years, the so-called Xiaodian begets the Yellow Emperor begets Changji, and Changji begets Zhuangzi, etc., are by no means passed down from father to son, but only through blood. For example, it is written in Taishi Gongshu that Huangdi is the son of Xiaodian, and Mandarin Jinyu records that Shi Xiaodian married the Yuzhou family and gave birth to Huangdi and Yandi. Huangdi was formed with Jishui, and Yandi was formed with Zhang Shui. So Huangdi is Ji, Yandi is Zhang, and the 2 emperors use their teachers to help each other, because of different virtues. Huangdi and Yandi have become brothers, but how can the world decline? How could the Yellow Emperor meet Sun Yugong, the 8th emperor of Yan? Therefore, the Xiaodian who gave birth to Huangdi Yandi here can only be the ancestor who gave birth to Huangdi Yandi, which only represents the bloodline and does not represent the inheritance from father to son. Based on the above problems, the origin of the Yellow Emperor era cannot be framed in the hundreds of years before the Xia dynasty in the version of historical records. 3. Traceability. 1. Traceability breakthrough. Tracing back to the era of the Yellow Emperor, we have not found a breakthrough, because there are too many records in various versions in ancient history, which makes people dazzled and difficult to distinguish. By chance, I found a breakthrough, which is the Ganzi calendar itself. In the calendar, there is a concept of 4 Jiazi, that is, Jiazi month, Jiazi day. Jiazi is the origin of the calendar. Since each Jiazi is at 60, theoretically there will be 4 Jiazi every 60 years, but what? Didn't show up? And it seems that there has never been a Sijiazi. A friend came to ask me why there are no 4 Jiazi. I didn't think much about it. I simply answered that because later generations have adjusted the monthly construction, the yearly and monthly stems and branches have changed. Simply put, they will not meet in the Jiazi year. Jiazi month, so there are no 4 Jiazi. Are there 4 Jiazi in history? 2. The starting point of the 4 Jiazi epochs. Ancient and modern Lulikao. In ancient times, the Tianzhen was at the midwinter solstice of Jiazi, and the sun and the moon were like a jade, and the 5 stars were like pearls. The starting point of the Ganzi calendar is the 4 Jiazi, and in conjunction with astronomy, the sun and the moon are combined, and the 5 stars are connected. Since the cycles of the sun and the moon, month, are different, the ancients measured that a year is 365 days and a quarter, and January is about 29.5 days. A year cannot be equally divided by the month, then leap needs to be set. Naiming shi, he, respecting and obeying Haoshan, counting the sun, moon, and stars, respecting and teaching the time of the people. Dividing the life of Zizhong, living in Yuyi, called Yang. Respecting the sunrise, and then Chendong. Midday, star bird, to Yin Zhong Chun. The analysis of the people, the characters of birds and beasts are small. Shenming Uncle Shi, who lives in Nanjiao. Chen Nanwei, respect. Riang, Xingguo, to Zhenzhong Xia. The people's cause, birds and beasts Zich. Shenming and Zhongzhong, living in the western land, called the Valley of Ignorance. Respect the way when the sun enters, and the journey to the west will be completed. In the night, the stars are empty, so as to mark the Mid-Autumn Festival. Its people are easy to change, and the birds and beasts are feathered. Deuteronomy and Uncle, living in the north, it is called Yudu. It is in Fu things. The days are short, the stars are subdued, and it is in the middle of winter. The people are slender, and the birds and beasts are hairy. The year is 366 days, and it is 4 o'clock in the leap month. Believe in the order of all officials, and all the merits will be prosperous. Intercalation is not a simple calculation of the least common multiple of the solar moon cycle, as that would not conform to astronomical phenomena. For example, the full moon must be on the 15th day, and the new moon must be on the first day of the new year. It must conform to both the sun and the moon, and the yin and yang calendar was born, so a more complicated set of intercalation methods was produced. 7 leap months are set in the 19th year, and the 19th year is the smallest unit above the year, which is called a chapter. 19 years are the chapters, and there are 7 leaps in the chapters, 4 chapters are the years, 20 years are the disciplines, and 60 years are the yuan. 1 yuan is 4,560 years. 3. $1 time. Why is the intercalary base so complicated? Because each base has different conditions to be met. The calendar year is the Jiazi month, Jiazi day, Jiazi time of the Jiazi year at that time, and this day is the winter solstice. In ancient times, the winter solstice was the beginning of the year, and the day and night were the beginning of the day. The winter month is the child month, and in the 19th year, the first day of the winter month overlaps with the winter solstice, and the 19th year is called a chapter. The 4th chapter is 76 years. Not only does the first day of the winter month overlap with the winter solstice, but that day must also be the child day, and the 76 years are a group. The 20th year is 1,520 years. Not only the first day of the winter month overlaps with the first day of the lunar month and the winter solstice, but that day must also be the Jiazi day, and the 20th year is a period. The Sanji is 1 yuan, that is, 4,560 years. Not only does the first day of the winter month overlap with the first day of the first month, the winter solstice, and the day of Jiazi, but it must also be the time of Jiazi in the middle of the night, which is 4,560 years in 1 yuan. This is also the origin of the word epoch. There is also a unit of time above yuan, which is called Ji in Zhou Bai Xuanzheng. The number of yin and yang, the law of the sun and the moon, 19 years old is a chapter. 4 chapters are 1 book, 76 years old. 20 years old is 1 year, and then 1,520 years old. 3 years old is 1 song, the first book 4,560 years old. The 7 heads are 1 pole, and the pole is 31,920 years old. Zhou Bai Xuanjing is Ji, and the first is Yuan. The 7 poems are 1 pole, 31,920 years. Unit. Duration. Condition. Year. 1 year. Chapter. 19 years. The first day of the winter month is the same day as the winter solstice. Shade. 76 years. The first day of the first winter month and the same day as the winter solstice are subdays. Discipline. 1520 _. The first day of the winter month, the winter solstice, the first day of the lunar month, and the same day as Jiazi. UN. 4560 _. The first day of the winter month, the winter solstice, the first day of the second month, the same day as Jiezi, and the time of Jiezi. Pol. 31,920 _. The sky renews the UN and makes a calendar. Of course, the above conditions are all calculated with 365.25 as the calendar return year, that is, 4,560 years is 1,665,540 days. In other words, except for the first Jiezi year, Jiezi month, and Jiezi day, which falls on the first day of the winter solstice, the second shortest time encountered is 4,560 years later. Of course, this is the case when the year and month stems and branches have not been changed. We know that the Huangdi Jianzi, with the first day of the month as the beginning of the year, the Xia calendar Jianyan, with the first day of the Yin month as the beginning of the year, the Shang calendar Jianzhou, with the first day of the ugly month as the beginning of the year, and the Zhou calendar Jianzi, with the first day of the Yin month as the beginning of the year, the first day of the sub-month is the first day of the year, Zhuangzi calendar Jianhai, the first day of the first lunar month is the first day of the year, and after the Taishu calendar of the Han Dynasty, it was restored to Jianyan, the first day of the lunar month was the first day of the year. Therefore, the annual and monthly stems and branches have been adjusted. This is the reason why later generations did not meet Jiezi. From the Han Dynasty to the present, Jianyan, the yearly stems and branches are changed at the beginning of spring. For example, this year's yearly stems and branches start at the beginning of spring. If the Yellow Emperor's calendar is used to build, it needs to go back to last year's winter solstice, which is the year of Gamao. Since the Huangdi calendar is an adjusted calendar, the calculation of 365.25 does not actually correspond to the year of regression. The modern measurement of the year of regression is 365.242193, and calendarists use 365.2422 as the calculation. Then 4,560 years is more than 1,665,540 years. Since the ancient solar terms used the method of leveling the air, and after the Qing dynasty, the method of calming the air was used, so the time of the 24 solar terms is different. But regardless of the calming Qi method or the calming Qi method, the winter solstice overlaps. Assuming that after running for 4,560 years from the first year of the Yellow Emperor calendar, Jiezi day, the first day of the 4,561st year, will be 36 days longer than the winter solstice day in the later adjusted calendar. Because 166554016655504 equals 36. In other words, the second Jiezi after 4560 years of the Yellow Emperor's calendar is actually on the 36th day of the winter solstice. The third Jiezi after 9120 years of the Yellow Emperor's calendar is on the 72nd day from the winter solstice. In the history since the Han Dynasty was rebuilt into Yin, those who can meet the 4 Jiezi must be on the 36th or 72nd day from the winter solstice of the Gihai year, the year before the Jiezi year. According to the ancient Huangdi calendar, it is already the Jiezi month of the Jiezi year. 4. Pushing up the UN proves that the daily stems and branches have not changed. Of course, some people will ask, because of Jianyan, the yearly and monthly stems and branches will change, have the daily stems and branches changed? Since the recorded Taishu calendar, the calendars promulgated in the past dynasties have a common feature, that is, they need to calculate Shanyuan. The so-called calculation of Shanyuan is a new calendar to calculate the epoch in accordance with this calendar backwards, that is, the first day of November is Jiezi day and midnight and enters the winter solstice. More accurate calculations require Kixing Lianzu. Under this algorithm, the upper UN of different calendars is different. In other words, the upper UN is a virtual beginning of the calendar and does not really exist. The Shang UN of most calendars is uniquely determined only by the 4 prerequisites of day name, year name, return year, and synodic month. Eligible to participate in its meta-calculation. Therefore, different calendars have different Shang UN cumulative years. The more precise the calculation, the longer the Shang UN cumulative years may meet the conditions. According to the Kaiwan Zhanjing records, the Huangdi calendar Shang Yuan's Inmao, so far, Jian in the second year of Kaiwan, is 2,768,863. The UN law is 4,560, and the Ji law is 1,520. This is not to say that the Huangdi calendar has been used for 2,768,863 years, but that the starting point of the Huangdi calendar is pushed forward by 4 Jiezi. The first year of the Shan Yuan is Sinmao, and the winter solstice it starts at midnight. In other words, the winter solstice at Sijiazi, the starting point of the Huangdi calendar, does not start at 0 o'clock, otherwise there is no need to calculate Shan Yuan. Zhuangzi calendar Shan Yuan Yumao, up to now, Jiyan, the second year of Kaiwan, is 2,761,199. Zhang was 19 years old, and Zhonglin was 17. Xiaoli Shan Yuan Yuku, so far, Jiyan in the second year of Kaiwan, is 2,765,589, not counting. Zhang was 19 years old, and Zhonglin was 17. Yin calendar Shan Yuan Jiyan, so far, Jiyan in the second year of Kaiwan, is 2,761,800. Zhang was 19 years old and Zhang was 17 years old. Zholi Shan Yuan Dingxi, so far, Jiyan in the second year of Kaiwan, is 2,761,130. Zhang was 19 years old and Zhang was 17 years old. Lu calendar Shan Yuan Zhengzi, so far, Jiyan in the second year of Kaiwan, is 2,761,334, not counting. Zhang was 19 years old and Zhang was 17 years old. Lu Xian's 3 Tongli records Zhengxiu in the Shan Yuan, so far, Jiyan in the second year of Kaiwan, is 143,934, not counting. Zhang was 19 years old, and Zhonglin was 17. Lu Hong's Jianxiang calendar was ugly in the Yuan dynasty, and so far, Jiyan in the second year of Kaiwan, is 7,885 years old. Han Su's Huang Chuli in Shan Yuan Renbua, so far, Jiyan in the second year of Kaiwan, is 32,722 years apart. The chapter is 19 years old, and the chapter is Leap 7. Yang Wei's Jingchu calendar Shan Yuan Renchen, up to now, Jiyan in the second year of Kaiwan, counts 4,523. He Jingtian's Yuan Jiali records Gangchen in the Shan Yuan, so far, Jiyan in the second year of Kaiwan, 5,974. Xiuchongji's De Ming calendar Shan Yuan Jiazi, so far, Jiyan in the second year of Kaiwan, is 52,190. List them one by one here, but the Linda calendar and Xinhua calendar pushed Shan Yuan to hundreds of millions of years. Why do you want to push the Yuan? Just set the winter solstice of a certain year as Yuan, it's not that no one does it. Sima Jian's Lisha Jiazi chapter wants to directly set the winter solstice as the Heshuo Jiazi day, but the Yellow Emperor Ganzi calendar continues to the winter solstice of that year, not the Jiazi day. If the regulations are directly changed to Jiazi day, then the Ganzi calendar will be changed. Fortunately, Sima Jian's plan was not adopted by Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty, otherwise there would be no information to push the Huangdi calendar today. Why did the calendars of all dynasties push the Yuan? The core is that the continuation of the daily stems and branches must never be changed. Using the inherent daily stems and branches to push back the Shan Yuan of the new calendar, this is also a tribute to the Yellow Emperor's calendar in the later calendars. In other words, the Yellow Emperor's calendar of stems and branches has continued to this day without any change or disorder. Therefore, according to the current Jianyan Jiazi year, the 36th or 72nd day from the winter solstice of the Gihai year is the 4th Jiazi in the ancient Huangdi calendar. 5. Possible 4 Jiazi. According to the previous knowledge, the 36th or 72nd day from the winter solstice of a certain Gihai year may be the new Sijiazi in the ancient Huangdi calendar. Searching according to this rule, since Jianyan in the Han Dynasty, there are only 2 that meet the reference. The 72nd day of the winter solstice of Gihai in the first year of Ximing, Sima Pai, Emperor Ai of the Eastern Jin Dynasty, Yi calendar 363, and the 14th day of the first month of Ximing in the second year of Ximing. The 36th day of the winter solstice of Gihai in the 4th year of Jingding of Zhaoyun, Emperor Litsong of the Southern Song Dynasty, Yi calendar 1263, the 18th day of the 12th lunar month in the 4th year of Jingding. In other words, the 4 Jiazi in the Yellow Emperor's calendar can only reach 363 years and 9,120 years in the Yi calendar, or until 1263 and 4560 years in the Yi calendar. If it reaches 363 years and 9,120 years in the Yi calendar, then the first year of the Yellow Emperor is the winter solstice Jiazi in 8757 BC in the Yi calendar. If it reaches 1,263 and 4,560 years in the Yi calendar, Then the first day of the Yellow Emperor is the winter solstice Jiazi in 3297 BC in the Yi calendar. Which one is it? 6. Binary time. Hanju, Shaowang and Li Xinzi Huangdi's Taili, the lessons are all sparse, and it is said that the Yellow Emperor was more than 6,000 years old in the third year from Yuanfen to Yuanfen. End and beginning, it is stated that the Yellow Emperor has been 3,629 years old, and he is not in harmony with the King of Shao. The King of Shao moved the Emperor records, and the ages of Shun and Yu did not match the human years. It shows that in the Han Dynasty, the distance between the Yellow Emperor and the Yellow Emperor in the Han Dynasty, there was an upper limit and a lower limit, and because the Yellow Emperor was said to be a dynasty, the upper limit and the lower limit are more in line with the beginning and end of the Yellow Emperor dynasty. And because it is said in the previous article that the Yellow Emperor's calendar starts from Sijiazi, and it takes 4,560 years to return to Sijiazi and the winter solstice and the first day overlap, so more than 3,000 years and more than 6,000 years are not consistent. According to the lower limit of the Yellow Emperor dynasty in Hanju, the third year of Yuanfen is 78 years ago. 3629 plus 78 plus 1263 equals 4970, which exceeds the 4,560 years of 1 Yuan time, which is only the lower limit, so the starting point of the Yellow Emperor's calendar cannot be Iwan in 3297 BC, the time of 1 Yuan seems not enough. Also, the Yellow Emperor got the treasured tripod from Wanshu, and asked in Gyu district. The district said, the Emperor got the treasured tripod's magic strategy. It is the year, Jiyo, Shodan, winter solstice, and the heavens discipline, and it will come back again. Huangdi got the treasure tripod, the winter solstice of this year is also the new day, and its daily stem and branch are Jiyo. If the time is placed in the area between the first 5,000 years and the next 5,000 years, the first 4,375 years are in line. This also further proves that only 1 Yuan, 4,560, is not enough from the first year of the Yellow Emperor to the fourth year of Jingding. In other words, it can be discarded on the 36th day of the winter solstice of Qihai in the fourth year of Emperor Litsong of the Southern Song Dynasty, Yi calendar 1263. Then the only possibility for the beginning of the Yellow Emperor's calendar is that the first year of Sima Pai Ximing, Emperor Ai of the Eastern Jin Dynasty, calendar 363, Qihai has gone through 9,120 years in the dual Yuan, so the first year of the Yellow Emperor is 8,757 years ago, 10,780 years ago. 4. Circumstantial evidence. If the Yellow Emperor was 10,780 years ago, apart from the above inferences, is there any circumstantial evidence to prove it? 1. The dynasties of the 5 emperors in Weishu. In all the literature, about Emperor Yao and Emperor Shun, they are about 100 or 50 years old, and the gap is not very big. Chun Kaimingli preface holds that, the 8th generation of Yandi, 520 years old, the 10th generation of Huangdi, 1,520 years, the 8th generation of Xiahao, 500 years old, 50 years old, Emperor Kuchuan 10th, 400 years old, Yao ruled 98 years, Kong Hua, Shun, ruled 53 years. Emperor Century, Si Yao ascended to Shun in 50 years of his reign. He became old in 20 years and became regent. He died in 28 years. He ascended the throne in 98 years and lived 118 years old. Yue Jilan 2, Yao 100 years, Shun 50 years. The biggest differences are the dynasties of Yandi, Huangdi, Xiahao, Zhuangzi, and Diku. In this paper, when examining the era of Huangdi, we first exclude the dynasty of Yandi and only look at the dynasties of Huangdi, Xiahao, Zhuangzi, and Diku. Yue Jilan 2, the 540 years of Shenan, the 1520 years of the Yellow Emperor, the 400 years of Xiahao, the 500 years of Zhuangzi, and the 350 years of Emperor Ku. And Mingli preface, the Yellow Emperor passed on the 10th generation for 2,520 years or cloud 18 generations. According to different versions of the records, the ages recorded in the 4 dynasties of Huangdi, Xiahao, Zhuangzi, and Diku are as follows. Yellow Emperor, 2,520, 1,520, 1,250, 1,072, 2,000, 1,000. Xiahao, 400 years, 490 years, 500 years, 1,000 years. Zhuangzi, 350 years, 500 years, 520 years, 548 years. Emperor Ku, 300 years, 350 years, 400 years, 1100 years. Through permutation and combination, it can be known that the maximum total number of years of these four dynasties is 5,168 years, and the minimum number of years is 2050 years. In addition to the ages of Emperor Ji, Emperor Yao, and Emperor Shun, there were more than 2,000 years to more than 5,000 years after the Yellow Emperor before the Xia dynasty. If the first year of the Yellow Emperor is 8,757 BC, it is 10,780 years ago. It is also known that the Xia dynasty was more than 4,000 years ago. According to the Dating Project, the Xia dynasty began in 2070 BC, and the Xia dynasty began in 2268 BC according to the Huangjijing Shishu, and it took about 6,489 years from the Yellow Emperor to Yu, which is completely in line with the Yellow Emperor. The period between the four dynasties of Digu and Emperor Ku. 2. Han Fize's record of Yu Xia's time. Regarding the existence of the Yu dynasty, Xia dynasty, or how long it lasted, in the historical records version or the Han dynasty Weisha version, the Yu dynasty only had Emperor Shun, and it lasted about 50 years. However, a record is hidden in Han Fize, which may overturn this understanding. Han Fize's Xiangxiu, the world's outstanding learning is Confucianism and Moism. Where Confucianism came, Confucius did. Where Mahist came, Amozai also. Since the death of Confucius, there have been Confucianism by Zizang, and Confucianism by Zizi. There are Confucians of the Yan family, Confucians of the Meng family, Confucians of the Kidiao family, Confucians of the Zhongliang family, Confucians of the Sun family, and Confucians of the Lezheng family. Since the death of Mozi, there has been a Confucianism of the Xiongli family. There is the ink of the Xiongfu family, and the ink of the Denling family. Therefore, after Confucius and Mok, Confucianism is divided into 8, and Mo is divided into 3. Who will make the learning of the world? Confucius and Mozi both follow the Tao of Yao and Shun, but they have different choices. They all claim to be the real Yao and Shun. Zhou was more than 700 years old, Yu and Xia were more than 2,000 years old, but they could not determine the truth of Confucianism and Moism, and now they want to examine the way of Yao and Shun before they were 3,000 years old. Han Fize was from the Warring States period, and the historical data he got were from before Xiangyu burned Xianyang Palace, which is at least more reliable than that from the Han Dynasty. What does it mean that Yin and Zhou are more than 700 years old, and Yu and Xia are more than 2,000 years old? If it refers to the era from Yin Zhou to Han Fize and the era from Yu Xia to Han Fize, why not write more than 700 years since Yin and Zhou, and more than 2,000 years since Yu and Xia? Moreover, the time since the Yin and Zhou dynasties is included in the time since the Yu Xia dynasty, and there are more than 700 years from the beginning of the Yin and Shang dynasties to the era of Han Fize. If it refers to the transition between Yin and Zhou to Han Fize, it is in line with more than 700 years. If it is the transition between Yin and Zhou to Han Fize, then there is only the Zhou dynasty, and there is no such thing as Yin and Shang. Therefore, from the logical analysis of the writing, it is not the Yin Shang to Han Fize era and the Yu Xia to Han Fize era, but the Yin and Zhou add up to more than 700 years, and the Yu and Xia add up to more than 2,000 years. But it is contradictory again, because the Zhou dynasty was only 800 years old. Why did the Yin and Zhou dynasties add up to more than 700 years? In fact, looking at the context of the writing, Han Fize is talking about the time when the royal family of Zhou still had Tianwei. What's more, there is also the last sentence. If you want to examine the way of Yao and Shun before the age of 3000, and prove that Emperor Yao went to Han Fize's time for more than 3000 years, it also proves that the Yu dynasty actually existed, and it lasted more than 1500 years. According to ancient historical records, there were as many as 15 emperors related to the Yu dynasty, which can also be verified from the side. Therefore, from the Yellow Emperor to Daewoo, it corresponds to more than 6000 years. 3. The Younger Dryas Incident. The Younger Dryas event is also a circumstantial evidence to prove that the Yellow Emperor's 10,780 years ago is in line with history. 12,900 years ago, the Younger Dryas event occurred, and the global climate cooled rapidly for a short period of time. Glacier regions formed at the North and South Poles, and the sea level dropped by about 200 meters. The ice sheets at the poles, the Alps, and the Qinghai Tibet Plateau expanded, and many of them migrated to high latitudes. Animals and plants died in large numbers. The drop in temperature this time was very sudden. In just 10 years, the average temperature of the Earth dropped by about 7 or 8 degrees Celsius. This drop in temperature lasted for thousands of years. There was also a cooling event until 8200 BC, in which the temperature suddenly dropped in the context of a warm post-glacial climate. It happened between 8490 BC, a continuation of the Younger Dryas incident. The East China Sea and other places are all land, and the Japanese islands can be reached by horseback. And there are more Ryukyu islands than there are today. There is a continental shelf trench between Ryukyu and the mainland, which is called Daegu in ancient books. The sea level dropped rapidly, and a large amount of land suitable for living appeared in the east, so the families and descendants of Emperor Jun, De Hao, Huangdi, Yandi, etc. all wanted to expand their territories eastward frantically. It is recorded in the Shanhai Jing that it occupied more than 20 mountains in the east and established 18 square kingdoms. 4. The Shanhai Jing records about Zhuangzi. De Huangdong Jing, the great gully outside the East China Sea, is the country of Xiahao. Zhuangzi, the emperor of Xiahao, abandoned his Qin and Se here. Where there are sweet mountains, sweet water flows out, and sweet abysses are born. According to the topography, after the sea level has dropped, the so-called country of Xiahao is the present-day Ryukyu Islands, and the Daegu is the trench between the continental shelf of Asia and Ryukyu. Xiahao Rudi Zhuangzi abandoned his Qin and Se in the Great Valley of the East China Sea, which shows that in the last years of the Xiahao dynasty, in Xiahao's Fangguo Xiahao kingdom, now the Ryukyu Islands, Zhuangzi originally assisted the Xiahao dynasty. Due to the break with the Xiahao dynasty, the monarch of the country threw the symbolic instrument of the Xiahao dynasty to Zhuangzi in the Daegu, returned to the mainland to compete for the throne, and established the Zhuangzi dynasty instead of the Xiahao dynasty. And this happened just when the Younger Dryas incident was about to end completely, and the sea level rose rapidly, forcing them to retreat to the mainland. That is, about 8,000 years ago. Therefore, the time from Huangdi to Xiahao was about 3,000 years ago, and more than 8,000 years ago, the first year of Huangdi could only be more than 11,000 years ago. Otherwise, the Daegu and the kingdom of Xiahao recorded in the Shanhai Jing will not match the time. Combining all the above, it can be concluded that the first year of the Yellow Emperor was 757 BC and 10,780 years ago, which is in line with the records in ancient books and the fact that the Shanhai Jing and the Younger Dryas incident occurred. 5. Verification of winter solstice in the past dynasties. According to the calculation of 365.25 in the ancient quarter calendar, there will be 36 days more in 4560 than the real return year, an average of 1 day in 126 years, and 12 days in 1520. In other words, if the first year of Emperor Ai of Jin dynasty Sima Pai Ximing, Yi calendar 363, Gui-Hai had gone through 9,120 years of dual Yuan, then starting from Yi calendar 363, every 126 years, the winter solstice would be 1 day less on average, to 363 plus 1520 equals after the winter solstice in 1883, it should be 12 days more than 72 days, that is, 84 days more or 85 days. Due to the difference in the Qi method of Ping Qi, the deviation of about 1 or 2 days is normal, but the overall 4,560 years cannot be deviated, it must be 36 days. The 72nd day of the winter solstice in 363, Jiazide, year of Bihai. The 74th day of the winter solstice in 489, Jiazide. The 73rd day of the winter solstice in 615, Jiazide. The 72nd day of the winter solstice in 741, Jiazide. It is not the year of Bihai, so the 72nd day is not taken. The 71st day of the winter solstice in 867, Jiazide. The 71st day of the winter solstice in 993, Jiazide. The 70th day of the winter solstice in 1119, Jiazide. The 70th day of the winter solstice in 1245, Jiazide. The 69th day of the winter solstice in 1371, Jiazide. The 69th day of the winter solstice in 1497, Jiazide. According to the above information, it is consistent with the reduction of 1 day every 126 years and the addition of 12 days every 1520 years. In addition, the 72nd day of the winter solstice in 363, G as a day. It can also be seen that it is the 12th day of the winter solstice. Does that correspond to the first year of 1520? It is obviously inconsistent. 1520 before 363 years is 1157 BC in the Yi calendar, at the turn of the Shang and Zhou dynasties, so it cannot be the first year of the Yellow Emperor if it is discarded directly. The Huangdi calendar is an adjusted calendar, which adjusts the first day of the winter solstice about every V. Conclusion. The inferences in this article are exclusive research and personal opinions. Readers are welcome to come and enlighten me.